welcome to my YouTube channel. Welcome back if you are returning. My name is Tari here at I Will Define Myself, and welcome to episode 1 in our shadow work series. Today I'm going to be going over just the ins and outs, giving you guys an overview of the series. Forgive me in advance. I have some notes in front of me because I want to be as intentional as possible with this process as we are in community together. So I'll give you a bit of a background on the purpose of the series, why I felt it was important, and then give you an overview of what we are going to be covering in each episode. So, as just a full disclaimer, I am not a medical professional. Okay, so if you need help, please do get some help. Okay, but this series is going to help you unpack some things internally if you are open to the process. This is meant to be a vulnerable experience. I will be vulnerable with you, including sharing some experience from my own personal journey, so that you just have an understanding of what you put into this process is what you are ultimately going to get out. And I want you to maximize as much of it as possible. Okay, so first, I want to thank each and every single one of you for being here. Let's go ahead and dive in. So, in this series, we are going to have a total of 8 episodes. I believe I'm going to make this season 1, okay? Because shadow work is very ongoing, okay? And it's meant to help us kind of understand those parts of ourselves that we may not necessarily like, that we may not necessarily care for, those parts of us that we may be ashamed of, um, those parts of us that cause triggers, just things that kind of make us uncomfortable, or even that other people have told us, hey, like, I don't like this about you, right? It could relate specifically to a vice. I know for me, mine is emotional eating, okay? And it takes a lot of honesty to do shadow work, but I'm not here to fix you. Shadow work isn't meant to fix you. Let's get rid of these parts of ourselves so that we can fit into this mold or this image that other people want to see us as, or even as ourselves, right? Shadow work is about embracing every single aspect of self, okay? The parts of yourself that you love the most and the parts of yourself that you're like, this is very questionable, right? But how do we embrace those aspects of ourselves? Because we're not just light, we're darkness too. Light casts shadow, right? And darkness doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but we do have to understand and have a clear awareness of how we work with those parts of ourselves, okay? This series is also going to be a very practical series, meaning there will be some homework, there will be some questions, some food for thought that will be in the description box below for you guys to refer to. I encourage you to get a journal. I will also be journaling myself during this process because this is meant to be a shared exchange. I will post guided questions to kind of help you unpack after we go through each episode what we are going to be covering. Okay. So after we sit with an episode, unpack some things, then you will be able to refer to the guided questions or the journal prompts. And we are going to use the entire week to kind of filter through each of these episodes, right? We want to take our time. We want to be intentional, okay? And we want to have a clear understanding of how we are impacted by each of the guided questions as it relates to shadow work in our overall growth and healing. Now, I'm going to say this to you in advance. Shadow work takes work, okay? So if you are not ready to do the work, maybe now is not the best time for you to participate and do a deep dive into this series. However, maybe if you are intrigued, okay, I'm not going to tell you, okay, don't do this, but if you are intrigued about maybe some of the things that you should take into consideration whenever you are performing shadow work or really trying to get in tune and in touch with those aspects of yourself and how to embrace yourself completely, okay, in the most holistic manner as possible, then yeah, I also say check it out. Maybe check out some of the guided questions, practice a little bit, but this is also meant to be taken at your own pace. But I can't stress the level of importance when it comes to vulnerability, having those honest conversations with yourself, being honest with yourself, being intentional with this process, meaning making time and clearing space for you to show up for yourself, for your growth. Okay. And I think last but not least is be free. Be free to be yourself in this space, in this moment. So many of us show up not authentically in other aspects of our life. And I am fortunate enough to where I really just don't know who else to be, but I feel like I am able to bring my complete self to work. But that isn't the case for all of us. And sometimes that inability to not be able to have that space or to find that space to be ourselves, create that space for ourselves, that can kind of cause a little bit of disillusionment, right? But extend grace to yourself during this process. Give yourself the space to feel all of the feels, okay? Tears are my go to emotion, and I do them often with everything. And so, however you deal or process with your feelings and your emotions, as long as we're not causing harm to anyone else, of course, give yourself the space to do that during this series. Okay. So, what are we going to be going over in this shadow work series? So, episode one is going to be about what shadow work is and why it is an important spiritual practice. Okay, we are going to be bringing awareness to those parts of ourselves that we have been either conditioned by, kind of that nature versus nurture thing, or survival. What are some things that those parts of us that have morphed into or become who we are out of survival mode, right? Because those things are also very valid and important. Spiritually, the shadow work is not dark. Again, it's not a negative thing, right? It is just what is unseen to a lot of people. Typically, shadow self includes parts of self that we try to hide, okay? So, what is it that we are not showing or not allowing others to see, okay? Third thing, healing happens through compassion and purpose. So be compassionate, be present during this process, okay? And we're truly going to reflect in the first episode on what parts of the self, of yourself, of myself, feel the hardest to accept right now and why. Why is it hard to accept these parts of self? How does it make us feel? And of course, with each episode, we will have guided questions to kind of help us unpack these, okay? Episode two, we is going to be centered on creating safety before inner work, okay? So creating safety, what does that mean? Your nervous system must feel safe. Okay, so probably in episode two, we might do a short 1 minute meditation or prayer before we get started to kind of ground our nerves, ground our energy, get centered. I meditated before I recorded this video, just making sure in full transparency because I typically do not get on camera. But because this is such a personal process, I thought it would be very impersonal if I did not show my full self to you guys as well. So, in episode two, with creating the safety before inner work, we are also going to talk about how spiritual healing honors the body, okay, as much as it honors the soul. Your full body means the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual self, okay, and all of those coming together as one and honoring the safety and the spiritual healing in all of those aspects of the body. Okay, so safety is a foundation, it is not a delay. And then, of course, as a reflection, we are going to talk about what helps you feel grounded, what helps you to feel safe. What are some things that you do to calm your nervous energy, to take care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? Okay. The third episode is going to be about emotional triggers. Okay, identifying emotional triggers and also discussing what those triggers mean for you spiritually or how they impact you spiritually. We might talk about how emotions are energetic, right? And how do we acknowledge those in healthy ways and create the space for us to acknowledge those? Because again, we don't want the shadow parts of self to be hidden, right? But we do want to be aware of when those parts of ourselves come to the forefront and why, and acknowledge those emotions and the energy that comes with it, and really, really unpack that. We're also going to talk about triggers, okay, and how those are invitations to awareness, right? Getting to know ourselves more and accepting all of those parts of ourselves. We're also going to talk about the spiritual growth aspect of this and the emotional presence it requires. And then again, probably have a reflection that's centered on what kind of emotions are you sitting with the most often when you are feeling triggered, right? Where do these triggers lead you to in your emotional space and place? And again, guided questions will be provided to unpack that very loaded question. Okay. Fourth episode is going to be centered on the mask we wear and the self beneath them. As I mentioned before, a lot of us don't necessarily have the space and place to bring our full and complete selves to every single environment. But every day we should be able to show up in some shape, form, and capacity as our complete selves, right? The parts that we don't really care for and the parts that we absolutely love about ourselves. But that's literally what makes us who we are as people. Okay. So, what are the masks that we wear in our lives and why do we wear them? Are they meant to keep us safe? Are they meant to protect us, right? Healing asks who we are beneath the mask, who we are beneath the performance, as our bare selves, right? In those deepest, darkest corners, when we're alone, when we're by ourselves, who are we, right? Who are we without the mask? And why are we that way? And why can't we be that way in front of others? Why don't we allow ourselves to be that way in front of others? Okay. Authenticity is a soul alignment. And then, of course, in episode 4, we will have a reflection and a series of guided questions that follow. Leading up to episode 5, which we are going to talk about inner child healing as a spiritual reunion. Okay. My inner child, I refer to her as baby Tariana often. And here recently, in full transparency, baby Tariana was running wild this past week. I had something that I was very triggered by. And as a result of that, baby Tariana was like, "Girl, I'm here. I need this space. I need this time." And she needed to be free. Oh, sorry, I just hit my mic. And I allowed myself to do that. Okay. So it's important for us to honor our inner child and realize the importance that a lot of the things, triggers, traumas that we experience do stem from childhood in some shape, form, or capacity, right? So our inner child work is about listening, okay? Not fixing, but listening. We're not here to fix anything, okay? You are fine just the way you are, okay? But we are here to grow. We are here to learn more about ourselves. We are here to show compassion and grace and love ourselves unapologetically. Healing is reunion with innocence and unmet needs. And during this time too, we aren't also going to focus on the things that trigger us. We're not going to focus on triggers in a negative sense, right? But we're also going to focus on those triggers where love meets memory. So what are some of those things that make your inner child jump to the moon or feel like you can do any and everything, right? What are some of those things? Of course, we will have a reflection with guided questions following after. Episode 6, okay? We are going to focus on shame, judgment, and releasing conditioning, okay? At this point, we won't be new in the series. We have laid a solid foundation and groundwork to move into the nitty gritty parts of shadow work, right? Dealing with the shame, dealing with the judgment, and dealing with releasing conditioning and meeting the standards of other people, okay? What are your standards for yourself? What does it mean to be you? And what does that mean for yourself in your life? What does that look like without the people pleasing? Okay. We're going to talk about shame is inherited. Okay. It is not innate. Okay. Shame came from an experience, it wasn't something that you were born with, right? So, how do we deal with that as we are navigating the shadow parts of self? Okay. The inner critic is also learned. All right. Do you remember when you were a child and you were free as a bird, light as a feather, not a care in the world? Could no one tell you anything? You didn't look at color, creed, you didn't look at socioeconomic background. You felt like you can do any and everything because impossible literally meant I'm possible. Okay. Something, some outside experience, something happened that caused that voice, that inner critic to come up, right? What was it? And it's going to be different for everyone, okay? Spirit invites you in, okay? It does not shame you, all right? So we have to have discernment and wisdom when it comes to unpacking what is that inner critic, that fear saying, versus what spirit wants us to know, okay? That you are loved, that you are loved, okay? Nothing more, nothing less. We'll have a reflective question, of course, which will be followed by a little bit of homework, some guided questions, okay? Stay with me, you guys. I'm almost finished. Episode 7, we are going to focus on reclaiming your power in the hidden shadow, okay? Which, of course, starts with having that foundation, knowing, knowing and being aware, okay, of what your triggers are, acknowledging your emotions, and realizing that ultimately you are in control because you get to control yourself, okay? The shadow holds suppressed joy and power. Okay. Remember, when you are operating from a space and place of love for yourself, you have nothing to be ashamed of. You are finally sitting in a space and place where you realize I am perfectly imperfect. Okay. And you are still enough and worthy. All right. Your shadow is nothing to be ashamed of. So in this episode, episode 7, we are going to reclaim power, okay, hidden within the shadow, right? And spiritual healing includes embodiment. As I've stated before, embodiment, embracing every single aspect of self and loving every single aspect of self. Of course, it will be followed by reflection and guided questions to really, really unpack what we talk about in the episode. Episode 8, certainly last but not least, has to do with integration, wholeness, and walking forward. Okay. So we are going to talk about how healing is cyclical, it's not linear. Okay. I talk about this all the time with my spiritual partner. How healing never goes away, shadow work never goes away. But the point is to get to that space and place where you are able to be aware, identify, feel, express, release, and have healthy ways of navigating spaces when you are triggered. That's enough. Okay. That's okay. You don't have to fix anything. You don't have to While you don't have to fix anything, you also don't have to let it control you and how you decide to move forward in life. Okay. Integration honors all parts. That is what this is about. Okay. We're not just here to nitpick at those parts of ourselves that someone else said they didn't like, or even that you don't care for. These are all parts of yourself, and we are going to honor these parts of ourselves in this space, okay? We are not going to be made to feel ashamed. We are not going to shy away. We are going to move forward in love and in light and embrace every single aspect of ourselves, okay? Trusting yourself is spiritual. This is a very spiritual process, and it means trusting yourself in the space to unpack everything, to be vulnerable, to allow yourself to feel all of the feels, and to trust the process. And how can you continue to meet yourself with love? Because you are deserving, you are enough, okay? And that will be episode 8, okay, of the Shadow Work series. And there will definitely, I think, be a season 2 at some point. But that is what is that is what we will be covering in the Shadow Work series. Okay. So technically this was an introductory episode to give you guys an idea of what we are going to be talking about. And I cannot wait to dive into episode 1 with you guys, which is centered on what is shadow work and why it is a spiritual process. Okay. We are going to be talking about understanding shadow work and beginning episode 1 with laying that foundation so you feel cool, calm, and collected when we begin to truly unpack and go through this process in community together. Okay, so you will find the guided questions below. I think I'm going to introduce them beforehand so you can come into class or the series having an idea of what we are already going to be talking about, unpacking and processing. But of course, take the week. I will have some guided questions in here as well to kind of get your wheels turning. Okay, get your wheels turning when it comes to just this overall series and maybe how you have felt even about this introductory video. Let me know. Are you excited? Are you afraid? Are you a little nervous? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready to be intentional? Are you here to learn a little bit more about where to start? Um, you get to set your own pace, okay? But I will challenge you in the best of ways, right? That is how we grow. So come with a growth mindset. Again, if you made it to this video through the entire video, please like, comment, subscribe, share. Even if you know anyone else who could benefit from this, I encourage you to share this content with them. And I look forward to seeing you guys in episode 1, okay, officially, where we are going to unpack what shadow work is. Okay, I'm sending love, light, and peace to you guys for this next week, and I will see you next Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay, until next time, bye.